Welcome to an all-new episode of Get Lit with Lianna, the podcast. Join me as I sit down with a new guest author in each episode to discuss their books, careers, and everything in between. Today, I'm sitting down with Eirene Tran Donohue, who is the screenwriter of the new Lifetime holiday movie, Christmas in the Spotlight. This movie is all the buzz right now because it does semi-resemble a very popular couple right now. Though the movie is totally unique and not at all a retelling of a real relationship, as a Taylor Swift fan, I really loved it. But I do need to say, as a lover of all romance stories, this movie stands on its own. It was so cute, so swoony, and I loved so much about it. I'm really excited to chat with the screenwriter today, and I know you'll love this conversation. This podcast episode is spoiler-free, so feel free to watch it before watching the movie. But don't forget that Christmas in the Spotlight does air on Lifetime this upcoming Saturday, November 23rd. So without further ado, my conversation with screenwriter Eirene Tran Donohue starts right now. Welcome, Eirene, to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. And I'm really excited to have you here to chat about your new movie. Everyone can go ahead and watch it this upcoming Saturday night. But yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. Christmas in the Spotlight is coming out. How are we feeling in the days leading up to its premiere?
I'm so excited. I can't wait for people to see this movie. I had so much fun writing it. And then, I got to visit the set and the cast, the director, the producers. Like, they all did such a great job with it, and it all turned out so well. And I'm so happy about it. It's really fun. I'm a huge Swiftie, and I mean, that's why I wrote this movie. And I understand people are very protective of Taylor Swift. It was absolutely written from a place of love by Swifties, by a group of women, like producers, director, executives, like everyone's a woman, everyone's a fan of Taylor Swift. And I wrote it like for the fans too, because I am a fan.
No, but I think that it's really important for everyone, like, going into watching this movie, understand that, like, it's not the story of Taylor and Travis. It's very much like,
not at all.
Kind of like
it was inspired by.
Exactly. Almost like a fan.
Inspired by, not based on at all.
Exactly. So like the concept of a pop star falling in love with a NFL player and like that kind of whirlwind romance, obviously that's like the main theme here, but it is not like Taylor and Travis's love story.
No. Yeah. And there are definitely like some deviations from, there's definitely parts that overlap. There's parts of the storyline, the way in which he sort of puts it out there that he's interested, or some of the other details of their careers and their family life. But some of it's very different. You have to build a story. First of all, I don't know them. I don't know them. I don't know what was going on with their romance. So it's all my imagination and what I could, draw from what was out there in the media. And then also what you have to do in order to write a movie and have a story work as a movie and stand on its own and as a Christmas movie. Yes, things are drawn from and inspired by real people and real events, but it is absolutely just me having fun with it. It's like fan fiction. Like, I just sort of ran with it, and then also deviated from it in terms of wanting to give these characters their own sort of story and their own identity separate of Taylor and Travis. And I wanted this movie to stand on its own as a fun Christmas romantic comedy. And I think it does. I think if you didn't know anything about Taylor and Travis and you watched this movie and you were a fan of Christmas, rom-coms, that you would enjoy it, and that you don't have to be a fan and you don't have to know all the backstory. There's a lot of Easter eggs. I did put a lot of that in there, but but it's nothing that if you didn't know it, it doesn't affect the story.
For sure. So before we talk about this movie, I would love to know a little bit more about you and your background, because typically on my podcast, I chat with authors, book writers. I've never had, I don't think at least, anyone on my show that is strictly a screenwriter or a script writer. So I would love to know a little bit more about like your background and how all of this kind of came to be.
Go back to the beginning. So I grew up in Rhode Island. I was born and raised in Rhode Island. My dad he passed away. He's Irish, Boston Irish. My mom is Vietnamese, one of 7 kids, grew up just loving movies and loving books. My dad was an award-winning poet when he was younger. He really, I was total bookworm. Like our house literally just had stacks and stacks of books like everywhere. It was just like living in a library basically.
Wow.
Or like more like an old used bookstore because there are literally like stacks of like books everywhere. And so I just grew up loving stories, but also loving movies, specifically like old movies. I grew up like I said, my dad he was very Catholic, so so I grew up on like black and white sort of Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, old Disney movies, things like that. Worked in a video store in high school in the 90s, so I thought I was going to be like Quentin Tarantino back when like the big indie scene was happening. And then I went to college and I went to Brown in Providence, Rhode Island, and their film department there was more theory and critical based. So I took a class my freshman year, being like, I'm gonna go and study film, and was not into it because I just wanted to talk about it was all like theory and it felt a little pretentious, and I was like, I just want to talk about stories. And characters and things like that. And so then I ended up actually being a history major because that's
Yeah.
stories. And I took a lot of creative nonfiction courses in college and wrote a lot of memoir and a lot of short stories and things like that. I met my Canadian husband while backpacking in Vietnam, actually, and then we traveled for a while and lived in Japan for a couple of years. We're in Indonesia, South Africa, did a sailing course. We were supposed to sail
Fun.
around the world. That didn't happen. And then I actually ended up, because I moved home, my dad was sick and three of my sisters were pregnant, and I moved home, and that I actually wrote a book. So I
Oh,
wrote a novel at that point because I was like, if I'm going to keep telling people that I'm going to be a writer, I should probably write something. And I hadn't really written anything for a long time. And so I wrote a novel that never got published, and but that I have recently sort of dusted off, and I'm sort of trying to see what I can do about getting that published. But after a while, just sort of set that aside. So I got some books on how to write screenplays, and I read a bunch of screenplays, and I wrote a screenplay. And I entered my screenplay into this thing called the Nickel Fellowship, which is run by the Academy Awards, which is sort of like the most prestigious amateur screenwriting competition that you can do. And I made it to the semifinals. And after that, started sending out my script and connected with my manager. And he was like, well, if you want to do this, you need to move to LA. And I was like, well, I am parked down the street. So done. And that was about 15 years ago. I was very fortunate. Things happened pretty quickly for me. I sold something within the year. And then I just, for the most part, kept selling on and off enough to keep me at it, and sold a couple TV pilots that never got made, sold some scripts that never got made, got hired to write some scripts, and then eventually things started getting made. I hadn't sold anything for a while, and I was just like pitching and pitching and writing scripts, and nothing was selling. And I read this article about how they were making 100 Christmas movies a year between like Lifetime and Hallmark and Netflix. And I love Christmas movies. And so I was like, told my reps, I was like, I want to write a Christmas. I was like, I want to write a Christmas movie. Like, let's look into this. And so I connected with, I'd done a movie for Lifetime previously. I'd adapted a YA book called Drink, Slay, Love about a teenage vampire. And so we reached out to Lifetime, to Tia Magini at Lifetime. And I was like, hey, like, I have some ideas for Christmas movies, and pitched her a couple ideas. And they bought one for a movie called Sugar and Spice Holiday, which was the first Asian-centered Christmas cable movie ever, pretty much. It was like, they'd had like singular Asian leads, but this was an entire Asian family. And that was so much fun. It was just like, I had so much fun writing it. I had so much fun having people watch it, the reaction, the way that people love Christmas movies is just brings me a lot of it's really fulfilling to me to be able to provide that level of comfort and entertainment to people. I did a movie for Netflix called A Tourist Guide to Love with Rachel Lee Cook,
I
which
just
was
watched it.
oh, okay. Did you like
I
it?
loved it. I love Rachel Lee. I really love Rachel Lee Cook,
She's
but
amazing. She,
I
by the way, like just so that everyone knows, because sometimes like you like these stars, she is legit like 100% good people, like down to earth. She was a producer on it, so smart, just really worked so hard, and it wouldn't have happened without her at all. Making because we pitched it to Netflix together, and she's incredible. And so that was amazing. It was one of the first American movies to be fully filmed in Vietnam in like over 20 years. And it was as far as I know, it's basically the first American movie that had nothing to do with the war, which was really important to me because even though the war is my dad was in the Navy, my mom grew up in the war. It is a huge part of my actual life and existence. It just really bothered me that the only time Americans ever, or most of the world ever thinks about Vietnam
Mhm.
is in relation to the war. And it's so much more than that. And so I wanted to show Vietnam, as a love story and not just a war story. Yeah, like I love romantic comedies. Or just straight up comedies. I like to make people laugh. I want to bring joy and entertainment to people because I think the world is dark enough.
Before we talk about the movie, I just need to know, growing up, obviously, you just mentioned that you literally grew up like surrounded by books. So, being an avid romance reader myself, I have to know what kind of books were you reading growing up? What kind of books do you read now? I have to believe you're a romance girly, given
I
you write.
am.
Okay, thank
I
goodness.
am a romance girly. A Girl's Guide to Hunting and Fishing was like a very influential book for me. The novel that I wrote is sort of similar to that in tone. It's sort of like literary fiction romance ish. My friend wrote this amazing like rom-com YA book called, and I'm trying to make sure that I get the title right. Brandon Huang is the author, and it's Gloria Buenostromo is not my girlfriend. And the protagonist is half Vietnamese, and it's like sort of like he's in love with his friend who's, but she's in the friend zone, like type of
Yeah,
thing. Another Sunshine Nails by Mai
yeah,
Nguyen, who
yeah,
I don't know personally, but like my friend worked like at the publishing company in
yeah.
um A Pha Love Story by Luan Lei, who's a friend of mine as well, which is like a teen, like Romeo and Juliet about like dueling pho restaurants in Little Saigon.
I love
Uh,
that.
yeah, so like I tend to read like right now when I have time, it's like a lot of Asian authors.
Okay, I would love to chat a bit about like the production of this film. Like, how involved being a screenwriter were you in terms of like the casting and being on set and all of those like actual execution pieces?
Almost none. So
Okay.
here's the thing about screenwriting is that you have basically no power and no control. Especially in features. In TV, it's a different world. TV, you are also usually the producer. It's like you are a writer producer.
Mhm.
There's a whole writing room. There's a staff. You're the showrunner. Like if it's your show, you have much more control. You're involved in all the production, the casting. And the directors are the ones that sort of come in and out. But
Mhm.
in features, it's considered a director's medium. And so and producers. So when I hand in my final draft, technically very often that can be it. Like they can do whatever they want with it. They can hire another writer to rewrite you. They
Mhm.
can cut scenes. They can, you have no say in who the director is and who the cast is, like anything. Thankfully, on this one, got some incredible producers. And so they sort of like kept me in the loop in terms of like I didn't have any say in it.
Okay.
But they did keep me in the loop. They were like, oh yeah, like where or they actually they did for they did ask my opinion on for the manager's role, the one that we eventually cast Jeannie Mai
Mhm.
it, as who is so great. And that actually, because I had written her as Asian, but there was a point where it was like, well, we're not really sure who we can get and like scheduling. And so we were looking at like a bunch of different people. And I was like, oh, this person would be great, or this, of the list that they sort of sent. And then it all worked out wonderfully because Jeannie, I've been a big fan of hers and she's Vietnamese. And so then
Yeah,
we got to connect and I was like, yeah, girl. And
love her.
she was like,
Yeah.
when I found out like a Vietnamese person wrote this, like it was amazing. And I'm always trying to sort of get representation,
For
sneak it
sure.
into my movies, even though I don't really have any control, like I said, don't have any control of it. Um, and so, but it like they did such a good job. Michelle Willette, who directed it, was incredible. The actors, Jessica Lord and Leith Walschlager, were so good. And I did get to go on set. So
That's
um,
fun.
my daughter and I are extras in the concert scene. If
Mhm.
you look just over Leith's shoulder above the little girl's head, it's like me and my daughter cheering.
So fun.
And so we got to go visit the set and I got to meet everyone when they were filming up in Toronto. Like, it's just so gratifying and it makes it all worth it because it's a really hard career. It's
Mhm.
There's just so much competition, so much rejection, the lack of control. Like you said, like you send in this thing and it's like your baby and then someone else is raising it and they're like totally changing it and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe you cut that or they made this change or that's not how I pictured it, and you just have to sort of let it go and
Yeah.
just understand that it's a collaborative process
Mhm.
and that other people are going to have their say in it and just hopefully trust them or be able to just be like, I did the best I could and
Mhm.
hope people enjoy it for what it is.
It's a good point. I mean, I hear that from a lot of authors who have their books adapted for the
Mm,
screen. And it's kind of also this like weird relationship where it's like, yes, it was like my idea and I wrote the initial way I wanted it to be told, but when it gets adapted, like it's now in the hands of screenwriters who are making changes necessary for the screen or directors who want it to look differently than maybe you visualize in your head. And it's interesting to hear from a screenwriter how even there's that change from when you write a script to when it actually gets put on the
yeah.
screen and what those changes are. Another thing about though this movie that I loved and that I found was like super different from other Lifetime holiday movies that I've seen or Hallmark movies that I've seen in the Christmas world is like the steam level. And I'm someone that really appreciates a nice steamy moment and I'm not someone that really can like have the patience to wait to the last 10 seconds of a movie for there to be a kiss and then
For the,
fade
for
back.
the one dry kiss.
Exactly. So
Yes.
tell me about like the script writing experience in terms of like having, first of all, multiple kisses throughout the movie, but then also like that hot scene where he takes his shirt off. Like there's like actual, like a
That
little bit more in this than I feel like we typically get in a Christmas movie. So tell me about that.
That is all Tia Magini, my girl at Lifetime.
Love.
She want like last year, was it, I think it's called I want to say it's called a Cowboy Christmas. Last year there was one. It was like the first one that had like, I mean, we called it a sex scene. It wasn't a sex scene, but like they like an acknowledgement of the fact that they had sex.
Right.
Like there was, whereas most of these movies, like there is, like you said, there's one kiss
Yeah.
and there's no acknowledgement that, grown people who are in a relationship might ever possibly actually have sex.
Right.
And so she, I think, wants to, lean into that because our audience, Lifetime, I mean, Lifetime and Hallmark do have overlap. I write for both, but Lifetime, I think, is embracing the fact that their audience might want something a little bit more, a
Amazing.
little bit sexier, and like, why not? Like these romances, and it's not even they're not like anything, crazy. It's literally just like shirtless and like some kisses and
Yeah.
it's sexy and it's romantic, and that's the problem with a lot of romance romances or romantic comedies is that like they're not romantic and they're not funny.
Yeah.
And and so for this, she like was like, yeah, go. She was
Love
like
it.
encouraged it, and I was like, okay, can I? I was like, really? Like
Love.
I can do this?
Okay, well, before I let you go, the one thing we need to talk about, and this is how I guess we will end the episode, is like the Taylor Swift Easter eggs throughout the movie. And
Yes.
I just like, as someone obviously who's a massive Swiftie and like going into the movie knowing that like it's not even that it's like kind of like that it's I guess inspired by their love story. What was it like for you to kind of be like Taylor Swift and put your own Easter eggs into something? Because we all know every Swiftie knows that like that's Taylor's number one thing. She's like constantly hinting at things and dropping hints. And like I was dying watching this movie. I think I picked up on every single friggin' hint.
I actually have my own Easter eggs in there for like people who know me because so Bowen, the main character, is named after my niece, who is a Swiftie. My brother-in-law's last name is Gonville, and his nick, Gonzo Gonville was like, one of his nicknames. And the niece is Eileen after my sister. Mira, the manager, is my other niece. Like there's just and the Bay Springs Bombers. So Bay Springs was a neighborhood in my town, in my hometown in Rhode Island. And so the Bay Springs Bomber, like I like to add in so all my movies have that. Like normally my like I have my daughter's name in there, so it got cut from here. But like like I name characters after people, or I just put in little details. But yeah, trying to work it in organically so that it wasn't like a bump or like too obvious or forced. But like the characters' names, I don't know, and some of them I don't know if they actually like the sportscasters. I don't,
I
did they put
stop.
names on the screen? I
Yes.
can't remember. Okay.
No, I have to literally share my screen with you because Steph, like I know Steph is like from Lifetime is on this call and she's camera off and muted, but like she will vouch for me later that I point blank asked her, I'm like, am I looking too much into this Chad Marcus and Amy Hanna? And I have the notes there and I need to know if I'm right. Can I please ask you, is this what they are?
Are, yes. I mean, absolutely,
Oh
right?
my God,
Like,
I'm so animated about this
and
one.
I think I don't know if it made it into the final cut where he's supposed to say, thank you, Amy.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, I think they cut it. It was in the script because like I specifically put it in there so he could be like,
Actually,
thank you.
maybe it is. I can't remember now. Maybe it is. No, but I was freaking out, particular at the sportscasters, because I was like, this is like something like you would think nothing of. But because I was like aware that obviously the screenwriter is a massive
Yeah.
Swiftie, I was on high alert for all these little like treats. Anyways, I was freaking out over the
So
chat.
glad you got that because yeah, I wasn't sure if they put their names up on the screen or not. Like I said, I've seen like a couple different cuts, so I'm not sure what made it into the final one. But yeah, there's a lot in there, and that's I mean, and that like again, like just to put it out there to like I know we're ending and everything, and I want to make sure that Swifties understand that this was made with love. I'm a huge Swiftie. Like end of the year Spotify top 0.1% of fans. You know, like last year, like I listen to her every day when I walk. It's part of my self-care routine. I go and I walk and I listen to Taylor Swift. Her music is a huge source of inspiration for me. It's a huge source of comfort for me. I wrote all the songs. I don't know if you know that. I wrote the
I
songs.
did hear that. That is insane. You wrote all of the
Um,
lyrics to
yeah, I
the.
wrote all the lyrics to the songs, which
Yeah.
I've just recently started doing is writing songs, and she's a huge inspiration to me. And look, yeah, like last year, when my dad died, the day after he died, I went to see Eras in the theater, like because it was like the literally the only place that I could think of that like would bring me some sort of like comfort or something. You know, like so this isn't just me. It's not just someone who's like, oh, I'm gonna capitalize on Taylor Swift's popularity and like jump on this bandwagon. Like she, like you see, I'm wearing all my, I got the necklace, I got the ring, I'm wearing all my Swiftie gear right now. Um, and I wrote it as a celebration of her. It's
Mhm.
like I think like you're a Swiftie. I hope that you got that. You know, like that you can tell that this was written with love and that it was trying to celebrate not just her and like how amazing she is and powerful and all of her messages of being vulnerable and opening your heart up and taking those risks and their relationship with each other.
I really think though, like on its own, this movie is so cute and so fun. It's an amazing holiday romance. And like for anyone that loves the pop star trope, will really enjoy it, whether or not they're a Swiftie. Like as you mentioned at the beginning, like all these little Easter eggs and stuff, like they're so fun for people who know the lore, but those who are not aware will enjoy it just as much. It's not like it's like detrimental to the plot or
Yeah.
like it just like an extra fun layer. But as its own story, this is like such a happy, cute like swoony romance. And I just like thoroughly enjoyed it from start to end. And I know that everyone listens to this podcast, obviously are big romance book readers. And as a romance book reader and as a romance movie watcher, like this was just such a fun piece of film to watch and enjoy. And like, regardless where you stand on the Taylor Swift spectrum, fan or not fan, like you will love this movie if you love romance movies and if you love romance books. And I think that that's something that is kind of maybe getting lost in the mix here, but definitely needs to be.
It's like love. There's so much condescension around these genres, romance literature, romantic movies, and you know, which clearly goes. I have this whole TED talk in my head about like the patriarchy and how that's why everything is because it's like the devaluing of anything that's considered feminine and everything. But like honestly, is there anything in life that isn't driven by love? Like
No.
that's like love is the most powerful force in the world. And so it's what gives you purpose. It's what makes life worth living. And so why shouldn't we write stories or write songs like Taylor does that celebrate love, that examines love, that like validates the experience of being in love, whether it's being heartbroken or actually being in the joy of like all of those things, the entire experience of love. And that's what I love that romance, you know, literature and books and everything, that sometimes there's so many ways in which you can use love and romance as a storytelling, you know, genre that covers so much ground emotionally and also just narratively.
Sure.
And so that's why I write. And also because I don't want to be in a dark place all day long. Like I go deep when I'm writing. I'm like in that world. And so for me, I was like, I want to be in a happy place and I want to bring other people to happy places as well. And if I can just give a little bit of, comfort and joy in the holidays and in these times,
Yeah.
then that is, I'm happy. I'm so happy to get this movie out there, and I hope that people like it.
I'm sure everyone will love it as much as me. I can't wait to like rewatch it again and obviously watch it this weekend when it's on
I know,
TV.
I'm so excited. Like,
Okay, well, thank you so
thank
much for
you.
taking the time to chat. This was so fun. And I would love to connect again, hopefully in the future for future projects.
Definitely. And I would love to get some like recommendations for you for when I do have time to read. I would love
Have a
some.
list. I have a good list for you. I'm like already like my wheels are turning. I'm looking at my bookshelf here and I'm like, what would I recommend? But I will send you some good ideas.
Awesome.